Well, as I explained to you here just moments ago, President Joe Biden now not meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi after a planned summit meeting with leaders was called off. It happened in the wake of this explosion at a hospital in the Gaza Strip that they claimed 500 people were killed. But all the videos I'm seeing recently show that the hospital itself may have survived in large part. I don't know. This is the problem with social media and the videos you see Israel and Hamas both blaming each other. Hamas claiming that Israel targeted the hospital in an airstrike. We know that's not true. And Israel blaming Islamic Jihad working with Hamas for misfiring near the hospital, which looks like that's what happened because the missiles were going downrange, leaving Gaza, flying directly over the hospital on their way into Israel. The White House and President Joe Biden say that's what they believe happened, but they're still investigating. But their conclusion is Islamic Jihad caused the attack. Concerns continue that the conflict could escalate if Hezbollah forces or Iran can officially join the fight. Iran's foreign minister tweeting that time was, quote, running out for Israel after that hospital attack. The U.S. continues its show of support for its ally with thousands ready to deploy and carrier strike groups already poised for defense in the Mediterranean. Joining me live to discuss this now is a former Navy SEAL and the CEO of the TalentWarGroup.com, Mike Sorelli. Mike, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
As you look at it, as you game this out, as you put the players on the field and look, I don't see how Israel would ignore Iran at this point. Gaza's going to be, it's a foregone conclusion. Gaza cannot stand up to what Israel is doing that. But Hezbollah has tens of thousands of rockets, 140,000 seasoned fighters, give or take. It's a real problem to the north. Then you've got Iran to the east. How do you see this playing out in the next day or week or month?
So Hezbollah and Hamas are proxies of Iran. The best scenario we can hope for is that they remain that and Iran doesn't overtly get in the war. Iran is a problem we've kicked down the road for far too long, since 1984, when we designated them a state sponsor of terrorism. Our half measures sanctions have not worked. And this is time for the Arab and Muslim world to step up. And because they are against Iran and Hamas does not mean they're against the rest of the Muslim world. The atrocities committed by Hamas cannot be defended by any rational characters. But Iran is a serious problem. And war by proxy is their MO and their sweet spot. They've become extremely good at it. And again, the Gulf Cooperation Council, nations like Jordan, Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia have to tell Iran, no, don't enter this conflict, because it has the implications of becoming a world war.
Here's my concern, and it's a concern of many. I had a member from the IDF retired here on the program yesterday. He had served for about 15 years. And we broached the subject of Israel having nuclear weapons and said, of course we have nuclear weapons. It's like the worst kept secret in the world. They have submarine-based and land-based nuclear missiles. He said that. And if Iran gets into this war, what other choice does Israel have to defend itself? It's a small nation. It's surrounded on all sides. And that's my fear, that if Iran comes in or Hezbollah comes in or anybody else, and Turkey's always a wild card in all of this. You never know what they're going to do, a member of NATO, but they're a wild card in my estimation, Mike. But Israel, to defend itself, might pull a nuclear trigger. And then what?
Last resort. That is, as we call the nuclear option. That no one in the world would wish or hopes for that. Again, if Iran were to come into the war, it then becomes the geopolitical checkers, and the checkers start to fall on both sides, where their nation's allies start to step in, and this conflict broadens across the world. The Middle East has always been unstable. The further destabilization of the Middle East impacts everyone across the globe, from oil prices, energy markets, trade, supply chain. It does not benefit everyone. We need the maturity of the Arab nations to step up and put an end to these Islamic extremists, and then also put Iran back in the box and deal with them in a different way. But it must be dealt with them. Arab.
Yeah.
Hey, Lawrence of Arabia.
One of the things I want to point out here is that, speaking of Jordan here, they said no refugees, zero. Egypt said the same thing. Absolutely not, because they know what people here in America refuse to understand. And that is, if you take a big chunk of those people, 100,000, 500,000, a million, and migrate them out, too many of those folks will be hardened Hamas-type supporters. They will be terrorists. They will be people that are ready to do harm to the Western governments. And yet I hear people on Capitol Hill in this country saying, oh, we have to bring in the refugees from Gaza. What do you say to that?
Hey, we've learned our lesson. We have enough problems in this nation right now. We don't need to inherit any more. This is an example of Hamas, the few speaking for the many. And this shows the impacts that Hamas has on, there are good citizens within Palestine, within Gaza. And again, even the Palestinians, the people in Gaza need to step up against Hamas and take their area back so that we remove the irrational characters or actors so that true negotiations can take place and result in outcomes for both sides of what peace looks like moving forward.
One last question. As you look at the tea leaves and you look how this is all lining up, the way that it's all coming together, do you expect Americans to be fighting on the ground in Israel or back in the Middle East anywhere as a result of this war? All right. Well, it looks like Mike's, we lost that connection to Alaska. That's okay. We got the answers we needed. Mike Sorelli, thank you for being here today. Greatly appreciate it. All right. I have a special programming note for you. Real America's Voice host John Solomon and the CEO of AMAC, Rebecca Weber, will be interviewing Ron DeSantis tonight here at 6 o'clock on Real America's Voice. Should be interesting. Whether or not you love him or hate him, he's running for president. You should stop and take a look. It's at 6 o'clock tonight. Coming up after the break, in the second round of voting today, Jim Jordan. So a net loss of one vote. A net loss of one vote. Jordan goes backwards. Many are questioning what's next. Congressman Ralph Norman will be here next, I can tell you that, with the latest. Don't go anywhere.